You know, throughout my time playing For Honor, I have an absolute love for Warden. Warden has been the first character I ever got to Prestige 10, and he continues to be one of my favorite characters if we're talking personality. I know that's kind of weird considering he doesn't talk a lot except during his attacks or when he's revived, and that's it. But to me, Warden is such a cool character. However, and sadly, he is the weakest character in For Honor. Period. He's even weaker than Peacekeeper, which is, like, unheard of. The fact that Warden, to me, is such a beloved character, and how weak he is, I personally cannot stand that. So, in this video, I would like to talk about the problem with Warden and the solution. Now, before we continue, I have to be very honest here. I am not, by all accounts, a pro-Warden main. By all accounts, I am basically just garbage with him. However, you, the viewer, might be a Warden main yourself. But the thing about Warden is that even Warden mains suffer greatly with him. All that they can really do is what they are given. And to me, Warden deserves so much more than just what he has. He feels like Cannon Fodder at times. So, let's begin. Let's start off with what I view to be the biggest problem with Warden. That personally being, to me, his overall abilities. Now, we're not talking about his feats, I mean his movesets, His movesets are so simple that he should be easy. Hell, Tiandi has lesser moves, and he's pretty great. But Warden, not so much. For Warden, once you throw a heavy attack, you'll be able to do a unblockable. For those who don't know this term, an unblockable is basically when you throw an attack in For Honor, it flashes orange. When this orange attack comes, you cannot block it. The only way you can dodge it is to, well, dodge it or parry it, or you're gonna take a ton of damage. Warden basically throw these out all the time. The problem is though, they're slower than molasses and are easily parryable. Now, of course, good Wardens can just feint this into a guard break or a guard break, and that's about it. But really, the only ever time you will ever hit someone with your heavy attack is if you screw with them enough with your feinting that they think you're going to feint again, but then you don't and you heavy attack them. This is a lot of effort and is kind of random at times depending on who you're fighting. Of course, we also have to talk about Warden's other problem. Now, his heavy attacks are not the problem. I just think they're extremely slow and predictable, and I think they should be a bit faster. However, Warden's main problem is the fact that he has a lot of counters, and he himself can't counter anything. And that's the problem. It feels like to me he's Cannon Fodder compared to literally everyone else in the game. And that's a problem. For me personally, I just think that Warden's bash is basically a death sentence. Now granted, the bash can help you, and it does do a tiny bit of damage. But the fact that you have to use a bash to get really some form of use out of Warden is kind of pathetic. The shoulder bash, for those who don't know, can stun an opponent if you are able to hit them, and with that bash you'll be able to do a light attack. And that's it. And then you might die. The other part about the shoulder bash is that it can be feinted or charged up. The charge up gives you hyper armor if you charge up to max, which is about an entire 2 seconds. Now, while that doesn't sound like a lot in For Honor, milliseconds matter than just a second, just so that you have some context. The problem with Warden's charge up shoulder bash, though, is the fact that it feels more like a death sentence than actually anything viable. Even Warden mains that I've come up against do not use their shoulder bash a lot, if ever. They mostly just use him as a straightforward character and never use it. Now granted, this is again not all Warden mains, because they're rarer than hell. But they can pop up from now and again, and when I do die to them, I don't get mad. I have respect for them. Because Warden's Bash, you have to be very skilled to use it. But the problem with the shoulder bash, to me, is that the shoulder bash is kind of easy to both counter and just dodge. You can just dodge out of the way, or just, hit the Warden while he's charging up with a light attack, and you'll deal damage. It feels like you're just getting yourself killed all the time whenever I play Warden. But for me personally, I do think that this can be fixed, but I'll talk about that in a moment. Another problem that Warden has is the fact that he has no side attack. Let me rephrase that, he has no dodge attack. Basically, every hero in the game has, whether that be a bash or a straight up attack. Now the attacks can be parried if you're quick enough, and you can get a free hit. But for those who are using the dodge attack, if an enemy throws a heavy at you, or just an all-around attack at you, if you're quick enough, you can dodge in a different direction and hit them. But do not do this when their guard is up, because they will just parry you. Now, with all that information in your head, why am I not talking about this about Warden? Well, Warden doesn't have one at all, and it's pointless. Yes, he does have his shoulder bash, again, but again, it's kind of useless because it's a shoulder bash. However, to me, there's another problem with not having the ability to do a dodge attack. Dodging attacks are really useful, like really useful. But Warden, who is a Vanguard, and just for everyone else's context here, every Vanguard, if not every character in the game, has a dodge attack of some kind. And to me, why doesn't Warden have one? He should. Every other character in the game has one, so why doesn't he? The next problem I want to talk about, though, is the fact that, to me, Warden does have some of... Actually, let me rephrase that. He has the worst feats in the game. His abilities. Now, for those who don't know what the abilities are in For Honor, they're basically abilities your character can get over time the longer the match goes. If you do well, you get all 4. Your abilities recharge depending on their tier. Tier 1s recharge the fastest, or I feel like doesn't really have any good feats at all. In my own words, his feats are so useless that at times it defies reality. Now, that's a very strong statement, so let me just fix myself here. His overall abilities are so useless at times, you might as well just not bring them. Now, there are only 3 that actually are very useful. These are mostly tier 4 perks. Morale Booster is easily his best feat in his kit. Period. Move on. Tier 3 is a bit different, though. I think all of them are basically useless. You have a grenade and second wind. Takedown is useless. So, in Tier 1, this one is a bit of a funny one for me to talk about. For in Tier 1, we have Body Count, which is a passive. By killing grunts, you gain some health and stamina. It's kind of useless on Warden because he's not even good in the minion lane at all. He's basically useless. Conqueror, allowing you to capture objectives faster, which is pretty good. And then he has this ability that is so cool in concept and is really helpful for you, but if you fight an enemy with it, you're just gonna die. It is Come At Me. Gain more renown from kills, but more damage from attacks. This is crippling to Warden. It's very useful against the minion lane, but we have just stated that he's not good in the minion lane at all, if ever. The problem with Come At Me is that it also lasts for a long time. To a point where you would think that it should just wear out, or you should cancel it, so that the Kyoshin running at you at full sprint to kick you in the face is, kind of worrying. So you want to turn that off, but you can't. And you will die horribly if you're not on top of, his bullshit. Because Kyoshins are made of that stuff. Throughout all that I just described, feats for Warden are laughable. Not really a single one is all that good for you or your team. The only one that's really useful is Morale Booster, and that's it. You would only take the grenade to clear out the minion lane, and even with that, it doesn't do a lot. But now I think we should talk about the solution. I think Morale Booster should stay the same, as it's just really good, and Catapult is just fun to pull off, which I won't lie. Catapult's just fun, alright, period. But when it comes to Come At Me, I truly do believe that the best way to fix Come At Me is just fix how you're supposed to use it. I personally think that it should just give you renown just for using it. Or at the very least, it doesn't give you the increased taking damage thing, and just gives you more renown for taking out players or minions, and that's it. But the effect doesn't last as long as it does. I just think that it's a really useful perk, and it's the only one that Warden actually has that's unique strictly to him. But it's such a risk and reward type thing that I rarely ever see anyone use it because of the risk it takes. And it will most likely just get you killed if you so much as just misstep with it. At Tier 2, I personally think that we don't really need to touch Tier 2. Inspire, which just nearby allies deal more damage and soldiers fight faster, is just really good. The other two don't really matter, though. Tier 3 is also kind of hard for me to really talk about, because Second Wind, which just allows you to recover health instantly, and the grenade, because I'm not going to actually pronounce this name correctly because it's in Latin, is also really solid. Takedown, however, is borderline useless. You would think that you could use your shoulder bash to knock them on the ground for a free hit, but it doesn't work like that. You don't do that at all, and that is frustrating beyond belief. So, I think Takedown should just be gone because of how useless it is, and instead should be replaced with another feat. Now, what feat that is, I don't really know, but for me, I just think that he should have, let's say, another passive. Like being able to deal more damage, or just for more balancing, just being able to be a bit more resistance to damage for a period of time. I think that this should be a perk, because not a perk, sorry, a feat, because, I don't know, I just think it's useful.
You captured Zone C.
And like I said, Tier 4, we can just leave it the way it is, as most of them are fine, at best. Morale Booster is just really good. But when we have to talk about, his abilities, actually stress it, not his abilities, his attacks, here's how I think he should be reworked. I think personally his zone attack should be undodgeable. This would at least stop people from side attacking you automatically and getting punished for it. This is also really good against at least players who are trying to run away from you. I don't know, but that's just me. Maybe not run away from you, but I don't know, it has its uses. They try to dodge your attack, but you feint it into your zone attack and it will hit them regardless. And that's something I really like. The other change that I would give Warden is his goddamn side attack. Just give him a side attack. That's all I ask. I don't care if it's unblockable or undodgeable. Just give him something to work with. And lastly, let's talk about his shoulder bash. The problem with the shoulder bash is that I think it's borderline useless. However, I do think it has some potential. But the charging feature to me is useless, alright? Just flat out useless. So let's talk about how to fix the shoulder bash. For me, let's take this. Once you do the shoulder bash, even if it's just for a quick charge up, you can get hyper armor from it, as long as you use it for about, well, a few milliseconds. Because you don't want to just have this like stance where you can just get hyper armor automatically. Although it will feel like that. Once you get that hyper armor though, you will bash into the enemy. Now depending on your charge, this either will stun the enemy for a long period of time, or it will be just a quick light attack. If you take up a full charge, however, you gain, of course, your hyper armor. But once you do throw your full charge shoulder bash, this will knock an enemy right onto the ground and set them up for a heavy attack. I think this would at least fix the problem with the shoulder bash. So that's kind of it. I do think Warden deserves a lot better, and while I'm not saying that my version of Warden is, good, I just wanted to share my thoughts on how I feel Warden needs to be fixed. Because the where he is right now, he's the weakest character in the game. And he's a Vanguard who's straightforward and supposedly easy. He's not. He's so hard to play, in fact, that it defies logic. You need to have so much game knowledge, it really can hurt your brain. It hurts a lot. Because he does so little, but he has the potential to do so much. So, let me just wrap it up and say, the problem with Warden is that he just needs some love and care from his developers. The people at Ubisoft need to fix him, and I'm just giving out my own suggestion to the problems and the solution. I'm not saying that these are going to happen, because I don't think anyone will listen to me, but I do think that it would be a good fix. Fix Warden, because he's the face of the game that a lot of people love and hate, but love again, and then hate again, and then love again. Warden deserves better, and I'm hoping that you will agree with me. Thank you all for watching, and thank you for your time. With Come At Me, I think